I visited Eldridge, Iowa, a few months ago. I had heard about its weird rule against using salt in public spaces. It sounded quirky, so I thought it would make a good topic for my freelance travel writing. I've been to many small towns, but nothing like this one. When I arrived, it looked like any other nice Midwestern town with cute shops and diners. But I felt something was off. I parked my car near a coffee shop and walked inside. The smell of freshly ground coffee beans filled the air. I sat by the window and got my camera ready to take pictures of the place. I noticed a few locals glancing my way, their eyes flicking between me and the salt shaker on the counter. It made me uneasy. Why would they care if I took photos? The barista, a young woman with a nervous look, came over. Don't talk about the salt law," she whispered quickly. "Just don't." I wasn't sure how to respond. Maybe she was just joking. Either way, I was curious and wanted to learn more. As I walked around Eldridge, people started whispering when I was near. They exchanged strange looks and smiles that felt forced. I took photos, but with each click, I felt their stares burn into my back more intensely. It felt wrong. It was like I wasn't welcome. Later, I overheard two men talking in hushed tones about the gathering in the woods. I leaned back to listen. They talked about meeting under the full moon. Just another small-town rumor, I thought. I turned to ask someone, but they quickly changed the subject, looking uneasy. Night came, and I found myself drawn to the edge of town where the woods were. I felt a chill wrap around me, but I kept going. The trees loomed over me, casting shadows. I stood there, waiting, wondering why I felt so drawn to that spot. Suddenly, I heard it, a low hum. A figure slipped out of the shadows. They stood there, staring at me without saying a word. My heart raced. I wanted to run, but I felt glued to the ground. My phone buzzed in my pocket, but I didn't move. I felt like I should say something. Instead, I just stood there. Then they mumbled something, but I couldn't hear it. I turned to leave, suddenly feeling terrified. I rushed back, glancing over my shoulder, but no one followed. I got back to my car, my hands shaking. I kept looking at the woods, expecting to see something horrific, but there was nothing. I drove out of Eldridge that night, a knot in my stomach. I had come to learn about a silly salt law, but I had learned too much. I felt like I stepped into something I wasn't meant to. Maybe I should have never come to this town in the first place. The noise of the world faded as I left. Only the low hum stayed in my mind, echoing with every thought I had on the road. When I got home, I thought about Eldridge constantly. I opened my laptop, trying to distract myself with research. Each click felt heavy, like the memory of that place was weighing me down. The salt law was still a curiosity, but those whispers about the gathering haunted me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had stumbled into something darker than I intended. I decided to dig deeper. I searched Eldridge, Iowa salt law, but came up empty. There were vague references to bizarre small-town laws, but nothing specific. The locals weren't talking, and there wasn't much online. I switched tactics and sought community forums. Maybe someone would know something. As I sifted through posts, I found a thread titled Eldridge Mysteries. The comments were a mix of jokes and genuine confusion. It turned into a rabbit hole of bizarre tales from its residents. Then, I saw a mention of an old salt mine that had closed decades ago. The mine was allegedly cursed. It piqued my curiosity more than the salt law. Could the salt mine have something to do with the law? I thought. It felt more than possible. I had to know. I set out to contact one of the commenters from the thread. She lived nearby in a town called Davenport. After a few emails back and forth, she agreed to meet. The next day, I drove to Davenport. I was still unsettled from my previous visit to Eldridge, but I had to find answers. We met in a diner, a cheerful place that felt worlds away from the eerie atmosphere I experienced in Eldridge. The woman introduced herself as Clara. She looked curious, a bit like a mystery novelist character. "I've heard strange stories about Eldridge," she began, leaning closer, her voice low. "People say the salt law is a way to keep the mind's curse at bay. No one in town acknowledges it, but it's like a tradition. They won't risk it." I felt a shiver run down my spine. "What do you mean, curse?" Clara hesitated. She glanced around the diner, as if checking for eavesdroppers. "They say that years ago there were accidents in the mine. People disappeared. Some linked them to rituals. It's why the town wants to distance itself from anything salt-related." My hands were clammy around my coffee cup. It felt like I was too deep into this already. "Rituals? What kind?" "The townsfolk meet in secret, under the full moon. Some believe they need to appease whatever is down there," she whispered, her eyes darting to the window. "They terrified me a bit when I first heard it, but I thought it was just local lore or something." I sat back in my seat, my heart racing. It made sense now. The tension in the air, the whispers. I was being watched because I had crossed an invisible line. Then, her phone buzzed. She pulled it out and glanced at the screen, her expression shifting. "Oh no, I have to go," she said suddenly, her voice tight. "You should leave too. Trust me." Before I could ask any questions, she slipped out of the booth and hurried toward the exit, leaving me sitting in stunned silence. I looked outside, instinctively scanning for something, someone. My heart hammered in my chest. That's when I saw it. A figure standing across the street, watching me. I couldn't make out their face, but I felt the same chill that wrapped around me in those woods. Panic surged. I pushed my chair back and bolted for the door. Whatever was happening in Eldridge wasn't done with me yet. I stumbled out of the diner, my pulse racing. I glanced back to see if Clara was still there, but she had vanished. The figure across the street remained, unmoving but unmistakably focused on me. I took a step back, fear gripping me tighter. I could feel the air thickening around me. I turned and ran. My car was parked a few blocks down, but I didn't want to risk looking back. I dashed through the parking lot, my breath leaving my lungs in quick bursts. I reached my car, yanked the door open, and scrambled in. I locked the doors, my eyes fixed on the figure. They hadn't moved. My fingers fumbled with the keys, and it felt like an eternity before the engine roared to life. I threw the car into reverse and sped away, adrenaline coursing through me. Driving out of Davenport, I couldn't shake the feeling that eyes were watching me. It felt like the whole town had turned their gaze toward me, tracking my every move. I wanted to think it was just paranoia, but the dread settled deep in my stomach. I couldn't ignore Clara's warning. What did she know that I didn't? Back home, I locked my doors and closed all the blinds. I needed to clear my head. I took a deep breath and opened my laptop again, itching to find something that made sense of this madness. The thread about Eldridge mysteries was still open, but instead of scrolling, I felt compelled to dig deeper into the curse of the salt mine. I scoured through old newspaper archives and stumbled upon an article from decades ago, detailing the mine's closure. The headline read, "Tragic Accident Claims Lives in Eldridge Mine." The small print suggested something more sinister, rumors of strange noises, shadows lurking in the depths, and whispers of people vanishing. I couldn't breathe. The mention of rituals and gatherings seeped back into my mind. I thought of Clara's words. What if people were still disappearing? I needed to know more, but every click brought new waves of fear. Would I be risking myself if I went back? Then I saw it. A photo. An old, grainy image of the mine's entrance. Even in black and white, there was something unsettling about it. Beside it, the article continued with a line that chilled me. Many locals believe the mine should remain undisturbed. I felt like I was being pulled into a trap. What did they know? Or who did they want to protect? My hands went cold as I realized I was in way over my head. And still, I couldn't turn away. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed from outside, jerking me from my thoughts. I shot up from my chair, heart pounding. I looked toward the window, but saw nothing. The street was quiet. My gaze darted to the door, then back outside. My mind raced with possibilities. Was it someone from Eldridge? Had they followed me? Then I heard another noise, a soft thud at the back of the house. I felt frozen in my spot. Whoever it was, they didn't want me to leave this time. I had to find out. I just hoped I wasn't about to uncover something far worse than I had imagined. I took a cautious step toward the back of the house. My pulse quickened. Every sound felt amplified. My breathing, the creaks of the old floorboards beneath me. I grabbed a kitchen knife, its blade glinting in the dim light. If someone was there, I needed to be ready. As I approached the back door, I hesitated. The thudding sound came again. It was rhythmic, and it sent shivers down my spine. I pressed my ear against the door, hoping to catch a hint of a voice or anything that might tell me who was there. Nothing, just the thud. It was like someone was banging at the door, trying to get in. I stepped back, heart racing. Should I open it, or should I hide? Before I could decide, I heard a soft scrape, then the unmistakable sound of a window sliding open. Panic surged, and my mind raced. I darted to the living room, praying that I hadn't left anything valuable on display. I didn't want them to find me. In the relative silence, I caught my breath and assessed my options. The front door was a clear line of sight for anyone coming in. The back was still a mystery. There had to be another way out if I needed to escape. But if I ran, who would know where I was? I leaned against the wall, knife tight in my grip, and waited. Then I heard it, a light footstep inside the house. My heart sank. They were in. I moved towards the bathroom, the only room with a lock. As I slipped inside, I heard the floor creak again, closer this time. I turned the lock with a quiet click, breathing hard. I could barely hear my own thoughts over the pounding of my heart. Then I remembered the article, the mine, the curse, the disappearances. Were they connected? Clara's warning echoed in my mind. If you dig too deep, you'll wish you hadn't. Had I uncovered something I wasn't meant to? The footfalls grew louder as whoever it was moved through the living room. I couldn't stay trapped in this bathroom. I had to make a choice. Finding a way out was priority number one. But at the same time, a small, horrific part of me craved to know who or what had invaded my space. I heard a whisper. It was faint, but unmistakably human. I know you're in there. My blood ran cold. How did they know? I gripped the knife tighter. Suddenly, everything went dark. The power flickered and failed. I was plunged into a suffocating darkness, my heart racing. Inky black silence swallowed the house whole. I was not alone. Not in this darkness. Panic clawed at me. I had to get out, and fast. The whispers continued, muted and unintelligible, and I could sense whoever it was getting closer. I needed a distraction. I reached for my phone, praying for a sliver of light. As I fumbled with the screen, I heard the doorknob rattling. They were coming for me now. My hands were shaking, but I had to act. I had to get to the front door. Any chance of escape was better than being trapped here. That's when I saw it, a sliver of light seeping in through the cracks of the door. Someone was trying to get in. Everything I had uncovered was spiraling into chaos. I couldn't wait any longer. I pushed open the bathroom window, ready to jump. Whatever was outside was now my only chance for survival. I clambered out of the window, the sharp edge of the sill biting into my palms. The cool night air hit my face, reviving me for just a moment. I glanced back, half expecting to see someone looming in the darkness, but the bathroom was just a shadowy outline. I hit the ground hard, the grass damp against my legs. The whispering had stopped, but I didn't take that as a good sign. I had to move. I sprinted toward the side of the house, keeping low and silent, hoping no one had seen me. The thudding continued, rhythmic and unyielding, like a heartbeat echoing in my head. I made my way to the front yard, creeping along the edge of the fading light. I could see the tree line beyond the house. If I could just make it there, I might find some cover. Suddenly, a figure slipped out from the shadows of the porch. I froze. The silhouette was tall, hunched, and moving with a predatory grace. I held my breath, clutching the knife like it was my last hope. Come out, wherever you are," the figure taunted, its voice low and chilling. I wished I could scream, but fear knotted my throat. They stepped forward, revealing a gaunt face, eyes wide with madness. It felt like they were searching for something, or someone. My stomach twisted as I realized that they were methodically scanning the yard, their attention rotating just a few feet from my hiding place. I had to act quickly. I crouched low and darted toward the trees, the underbrush crackling beneath my feet. The figure didn't seem to notice yet, but I knew that couldn't last. I had to get deeper into the woods where I could find some safety. As I slipped behind the trunk of a massive oak, I heard a shout that sent ice through my veins. "I know you're out there! Show yourself!" Every muscle in my body was tense, ready to bolt. I wanted to run, but I would have to choose my moment wisely. My heart raced, drowning out any rational thought. Then, just as I was about to push deeper into the woods, I caught a glimpse of something glinting in the grass by the porch. It was a metallic object, half buried. I hesitated. Should I investigate or risk being caught? Before I could decide, a branch snapped behind me. I spun around, ready to confront whatever was lurking behind the tree. There were more of them, 2 shadows creeping closer, eyes gleaming with menace. I realized I didn't have a choice anymore. I had to know. I had to find out who they were and what they wanted. As I backed away from the tree, my decision made, I heard an ominous whisper behind me. "Find her before she escapes." In that moment, I understood this was only the beginning. Whatever had happened in the mine, whatever curse had unfolded, was crawling its way into my life. I took one last glance at the porch and bolted toward the glimmer, willing myself to maintain control over my rising panic. What was under that grass? Maybe it was just the answer I needed. And then came the scream. I darted toward the porch, my heart pounding in my chest. The moonlight cast a silver glow, illuminating the ground just enough for me to make out the glint. Each breath felt like a risk, but curiosity pulled me closer. I knelt down, pushing aside tufts of grass, and there it was, a rusted key, its surface jagged and worn. Before I could fully register its significance, the crackling of branches grew louder. I could hear them moving, those figures from before, coming closer. It felt like they were circling, intent on finding me. I pocketed the key, my fingers trembling. I needed a plan. The shadows shifted by the house, and I had no choice but to turn away from them and make a break for the trees. I could still hear the distant remnants of that scream echoing in my mind, mingling with the unease in my gut. Who was it, and why did it make the air feel heavy? I sprinted back into the darkness of the woods, branches scraping against my arms. I had to find a place to hide and think. Every rustle in the underbrush sent jolts of panic through me. I could hear whispers now, barely audible but growing louder, intertwined with voices of both men and women. They were discussing me. "If she gets out of the woods, it'll make things much harder," one voice said, sharp and commanding. "If we just keep looking," another voice replied, laced with desperation, "we'll find her." My heart raced even faster. They were hunting for me, but what did they want? Every instinct told me to keep moving, but I had to understand. The key felt heavier in my pocket. I needed to find a safe place to figure out what it opened. I stumbled upon a clearing and froze in disbelief. In the center lay a small, abandoned cabin, its windows boarded up and walls covered with years of grime. It felt like the type of place I might find in a horror movie, but now it looked like my best option for shelter. Just as I approached, the door creaked open slightly, revealing darkness inside. Was someone already there? Or was it just an invitation I couldn't afford to ignore? The whispers were growing faint, drifting further away. Maybe they hadn't seen me yet. My pulse raced. I stepped inside the cabin, heart hammering, trying to blend with the shadows. And that's when I heard it, a low, guttural sound emerging from deeper within the cabin. It sent chills down my spine. Whatever was hidden in this place, it was alive. I took one cautious step forward, the floor creaking beneath me, and then I saw it. A figure huddled in the corner, shrouded in darkness, limbs twisted at odd angles. My breath lodged in my throat. This wasn't just any stranger. This was connected to the mine, and it was waiting for me. Before I could react, it turned its head, eyes wide with a wild energy, locked onto me with an unsettling intensity. And then it spoke. "Help me," it rasped, the sound scraping like nails against wood. My mind raced. Help? Who was this person? Fear and confusion crashed together in a wave of adrenaline. Before I could respond, the figure shifted, its face partially illuminated by the fading moonlight streaming through a crack in the boards. The expression twisted with pain and urgency. "Please, I need to get out." It looked behind itself, as if fearing something would emerge from the shadows. I took a tentative step closer, compelled yet terrified. The cabin felt smaller, like the walls were closing in. "What are you doing here?" I managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper. "I know why they're looking for you. They want the key." The figure's eyes deepened with an intensity that sent chills to my core. "You have to get away from them. They won't stop until they find you." The key. I pressed my hand into my pocket, the cold metal biting against my skin. I opened my mouth to question further, but the sound of footsteps outside sent panic coursing through my veins. "They're back!" the person hissed, scrambling to their feet, their movements awkward and disjointed. "We can't stay here." My instincts screamed at me to run, but I had just found this person. Maybe they could help me figure everything out. "Who are you?" I bit back the urgency in my tone, desperate to hold on to some semblance of control. Before the figure could reply, heavy footsteps thudded by the cabin. There were at least 2 of them. I felt the adrenaline settle into my bones, a primal urge to flee. "We don't have time," I said, my voice rising just above the sound of approaching boots. The figure began, but another jolt of fear silenced them. I glanced at the door. If we waited any longer, we'd be trapped. "Come on, we have to go," I urged, pulling them toward the back of the cabin where an old window sat partially ajar. The figure hesitated, glancing back. "I can't move like you. I don't care. Just trust me." I gripped their arm, my heart pounding furiously, then pushed them toward the window. With a final glance toward the door, I hoisted myself up, the frame biting into my hips as I crawled through. The night air hit my face like a splash of cold water, but I didn't pause. I dropped to the ground outside, scanning for any sign of the pursuers. Just as I turned to help the figure escape, a shout rang out from the woods, splitting the night. "She's here! Find her!" I felt the surge of panic rise in my throat. There wasn't much time. "Hurry!" I urged, reaching back for them. But the sound of my own voice made it all the more clear. I was in real danger, and the woods were closing in around me. Then, before I could make sense of it all, I felt a hard grip on my shoulder pull me back. And just like that, the darkness enveloped me. In that moment, nothing made sense anymore. I woke up gasping, my body sprawled on damp leaves. Distant echoes of shouting faded, replaced by the soft chirps of night creatures. I blinked against the moonlight filtering through branches, disoriented. What had happened? Pain shot through my shoulder where someone had grabbed me. I jerked upright, scanning the area. The figure, the one who had begged for help, it was nowhere to be seen. Panic settled into my chest. Had I imagined it all? Or had they been taken? "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling. It sounded weak, swallowed by the thick woods around me. No answer came, just the rustle of the trees swaying above. I tried to shake off the lingering fear and focus. I needed to move. The threats were still out there. I pushed myself onto my feet, feeling the cool air rush past my skin. I needed to find a way out, to get back home. But home felt like a distant memory. I glanced back at the cabin, barely visible behind the trees. A shiver ran through me. If they were still there, I couldn't risk going back. As I turned to leave, a flash of light cut through the darkness, illuminating a path deeper into the forest. Against my better judgment, I followed it, each step behind me filled with uncertainty. After what felt like an eternity of dodging branches and dead leaves, I stumbled into a small clearing. In the center stood an old wooden sign posting towards different directions. Havenwood Woods, it read, along with a couple of other names I didn't recognize. Suddenly, I spotted something on the ground, a metallic glint. I knelt down, uncovering a small object half buried in the underbrush. It was an old key, similar to the one I had in my pocket. My heart raced. Was it the key? Did it belong to the figure I had met? Then I heard it again, the footsteps, breaking twigs under heavy boots. They were close. The adrenaline surged back, and I stuffed the key into my pocket with shaky hands. I had to hide. I darted behind a thick trunk, pressing myself against the rough bark, hoping they wouldn't notice me. I could hear their whispers now, low and hurried. She went this way. They were after me. Clenching my jaw, I took a deep breath to steady my racing heart, but it felt impossible overlapping with the sound of their pursuit. What did they want with the key? That was when I noticed something else, a barely hidden trapdoor at the base of the tree. The darkness below beckoned to me as I crouched near it, realizing I had no other choice. With one last glance around, I threw myself into the hole and pulled the door shut behind me. The darkness enveloped me, silencing the world above. It was damp and earthy, seeping through the cracks of the wood, but at least I was hidden. Then I heard voices again, muffled from above. We have to find her before it's too late. I held my breath, feeling the enormity of their threat linger like a heavy weight. What did that mean? What were they after? I needed answers, and the darkness was just the start. The darkness pressed in around me. I could barely see my hands in front of my face. My heart thudded in my chest, loud against the thick silence. I couldn't tell how deep the hole went, but I knew I had to stay quiet. I crouched low, trying to listen through the trapdoor, hoping the voices above would drift away. "Check over there," one voice ordered, tinged with impatience. "She can't have gone far." I felt a chill creep up my spine. Whoever they were methodical. A wave of nausea washed over me. I couldn't let them find me. While I waited, I fumbled for my flashlight. A moment later, a weak beam cut through the darkness, bouncing off damp walls. Dust hung in the air like lost hopes. I turned the light slowly, praying for any hint of escape. The passage wasn't wide, but it seemed to stretch on forever. Old wooden beams lined the walls, and chunks of dirt occasionally dripped down from above. I couldn't shake the feeling that this place held secrets, and I needed to uncover them before I became one of them. Suddenly, a scuffling sound came from the trapdoor. Panic surged as I braced myself against the wall, ready to bolt if they found me. The door creaked, and tiny beams of light sliced through the cracks. "Where did she go?" Another voice snapped, full of frustration. "She has to be down there." I pressed my back flush against the wall, my heart racing faster. Would they come down after me? "Let's split up," the first voice suggested. "You check that way, I'll check the other paths." Panic bubbled within me. If they split up, they'd be able to cover more ground. My sense of urgency surged, and I had to move. I turned away from the light and ventured further down the narrow passage. Each step felt heavy, uncertain. I could hear the muffled voices grow more distant, but I didn't stop to catch my breath. As I navigated the cramped space, I caught sight of something glittering against the wall. Curiosity drew me closer. It was another key, this one bigger and more ornate than the first. My gut twisted. What did it unlock? I hesitated before pocketing it, the weight pulling me down as I moved on. Soon, I reached a fork in the path. One way looked narrow and dark, the other dimly lit with a faint glow at the end. Shadows danced on the walls as if urging me to choose. Just then, a chilling echo reached my ears. Someone was coming. I had mere seconds to decide. Adrenaline shot through me, and without thinking, I bolted down the lit path, but my heart sank. The light began to flicker uneasily. Then it went out completely. I stumbled in the pitch black, fear clawing at my throat. With no light, I couldn't see where I was going. I reached my hands out, trying to find anything I could grab onto. That's when I collided with something solid. My breath caught. I was not alone. A low growl rumbled in the darkness. I froze, pulse pounding in my ears. What was lurking just out of sight? The growl echoed in the oppressive darkness, a guttural sound that sent shivers down my spine. My instincts screamed at me to run, but my feet refused to move. I could feel its presence, a looming weight just inches away, and every breath I took felt like a challenge to whatever lurked in the shadows. "Who's there?" I managed to whisper, my voice barely breaking the silence. The growl morphed into a soft snarl, and I tiptoed backward, desperate to create distance between us. I couldn't let it corner me. Suddenly, the flickering light returned, illuminating a horrifying visage. The creature was a twisted version of a human, its limbs contorted unnaturally, and its eyes glistening with a hollow hunger. I backed away, trying to suppress the urge to scream. With a jolt, I remembered the keys in my pocket. Perhaps they could be my way out. I reached inside for the larger key, its weight comforting despite the chaos around me. My heart raced, remembering Clara's words about the mine and its dark secrets. Perhaps the keys were meant for something within this cursed realm. Panic surged, fueled by the dimming light and the figure's advancing presence. I ran on instinct, plunging deeper into the dark corridor until I hit another wall. My hands brushed against its rough surface, and I realized I had come to a dead end. "Stupid, stupid," I whispered to myself, my pulse hammering in my ears. The creature was close now. I could hear its raspy breaths getting louder. I had to do something. I turned, looking for an escape, my fingers fumbling with the key as my heart raced. In desperation, I pressed it against the wall, and as if by some miracle, it slid into a keyhole I hadn't noticed before. I twisted it, and to my astonishment, the wall creaked open, revealing a shallow opening just large enough for me to squeeze through. Without hesitation, I dove into the space, pulling the door closed behind me just as the creature lunged forward with a terrible howl. I flinched at the sound, feeling the vibrations of its rage echoed through the wall. The key had worked, but I had no idea where this passage led. I crawled through the narrow opening, heart racing and breath coming in short gasps. It felt like the world around me was closing in. There was no turning back now. After a few terrifying moments, the passage opened into a dimly lit chamber. The walls shimmered with something, the salt. It was scattered across the floors and clung to the beams, casting an eerie glow throughout the space. Suddenly, the low hum returned, pulsating through the room, its vibrations resonating with the salt. A conspiracy of shadows flickered at the edges of my vision, warped figures contained in the darkness. I could feel my heart sink. The salt was significant. There was something alive in it, something that spoke to the curse. The chambers of the mine pulsed with a dark energy, and I understood Clara's warnings all too well. The town had sealed itself away from the truth, but here I was standing before its heart, a raw, throbbing center of everything terrible Eldridge hid. That's when I caught sight of something protruding from the wall, a sealed box engraved with intricate designs resembling the keys in my pocket. I approached it cautiously, hoping to discover the answers I sought. I fumbled for the second key and inserted it into yet another lock. The box clicked open and dust sprang forth, spiraling into the air. Inside lay remnants of the past, tattered letters, old photographs of families long gone, and a heavy locket glinting in the muted light. The weight of history pressed down on my shoulders. These were not merely objects, they were stories, marked with grief, loss, and a need for mobility, an escape from the curse that had festered for generations. I took a shaky breath, overwhelmed by the gravity of the moment. The shadows danced ominously around me, whispering secrets that felt dangerous to know. I could hear them again, clearer than before. The whispers, the townspeople's warnings, their fate, and now, perhaps mine too. I cast a glance back towards the now closed passage. It was a gamble to stay in this chamber, but it might just buy me time. With renewed urgency, I gathered a few letters and tucked them under my arm, along with the locket. I might not fully understand what I had uncovered, but I knew I needed proof. Proof that the mine's secrets were far darker than the quaint town of Eldridge had ever let on. I turned, contemplating the narrow exit back to the darkness, every fiber of my being compelling me to flee before more shadows emerged. With the letters cradled tightly, a sudden realization clinched my thoughts. I would leave, but the real questions would just linger in the air. Had layers of the past truly been laid to rest? Or would the cycle of silence and sacrifice continue? I fled down the narrow passageway, aware that whatever had been unleashed in the darkness would not rest until it had what it wanted. Emerging back into the woods, the cool air wrapped around me like a shroud. I stood on the precipice between light and dark, knowing the town would never let go of its secrets that easily. The echoes of long-held fears and whispered legends would forever haunt me, intertwining my fate with Eldridge and ensuring that I would always look back, questioning, wondering. And then the low hum returned, omnipresent and persistent, reverberating within my mind as if beckoning me back into buried mysteries I thought I had escaped. Would the cycle of shadows claim me too? I turned away from the trees, but I knew even then that I would never leave this town behind completely. It would always draw me back.